Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Thank you guys so much for being here. Today we are going to be creating this little dialogue system that you can add to anything in your game that allows you to have multiple lines of text and a name on something to where you can interact with it and print out text in kind of this typewriter fashion. If you find this useful, I would really appreciate you giving me a like, subscribe if you can, helps out the channel a ton. Also check out Patreon and the Discord, and you can also check out the assets that I make on the marketplace if you want to support me more. All right, let's get started. All right, here we go. So this system is going to be using a few different systems together. So this can get a little confusing. There's kind of a lot going on here. So just hang with me. I'm going to try to go slow and explain things as we go. So I think what we want to do first is the idea is we want to be able to create a single blueprint that we can just drop in our level. And then we're going to create an actor component that can attach to that. And the great thing about this is you could attach this actor component to anything, really. As long as you have your interaction interface part of it, you could attach this to anything you want. You could attach it to like our item that we've made, or a door, or anything really. So I think what we will do is we will create a trigger box first, but we're going to do it through a blueprint. So I'm going to go to my content and into my blueprints, and I'm going to create a new blueprint, which is just going to be an actor. And I'm going to call this BP dialog box, dialog trigger, or whatever. And let's open that up. And the first thing I want to do, since this is going to be an actor that we want to actually interact with, let's go ahead and add our interaction interface. And if you don't know what I'm doing here, be sure to go back and watch my tutorial for how to make an interaction interface so you can know what is going on here. Or if you have your own, you can, of course, use that. BPI interaction is what we're looking for. And let's see, I'm going to just delete that stuff and get my interaction here. And then we also want to add a box collision. So we'll add that. And very important step here, we need to make sure that we change our collision on this, because by default, I don't believe this will trigger our line trace that we're using. So if I scroll down to the collision presets, with the box selected, I need to change collision preset to custom, and under trace responses, we just want to set visibility to block, and that should do what we want to do there. So let's also just test this out. Let's just get a print string and just drop this in and make sure this works. Okay, we'll just put this kind of over this picture, something like that. All right, and there we go. Okay, that is good. I'm also going to just quickly disable this print string. Where was I doing that? Right here. Just so that was from our previous tutorial where we made the puzzle. I just don't want that showing up all the time. Okay, so I can delete this for right now. And I'm going to leave this open, but we need to start making our blueprint components, or actor components. So let's right-click and create a new blueprint. And we're going to choose actor components. And I'm going to call this BPC dialog. And then before I go any further, just so I don't forget, I'm going to go ahead and add that. So let's save all. And back in our dialog box, I'm going to add BPC dialog right there. Okay, and we can compile and save. Now let's go ahead and open our dialog up And let's see, I'm trying to think the best way to do this because we have a few different things that are all going to work together. So I guess what we can do, we can go ahead and create a custom event here, custom events, and we will call this, let's just call this speech. Okay. And I think that's all we're going to do on this for right now because we need to create a widget for us to basically create inside of this. So let's go back to our content drawer, go to widgets, and let's create a new widget. So user interface, widget blueprints, user widget, and I'll just call this W underscore dialogue. Okay, open that up. And now we want to add a canvas panel first, as usual. And then we want to add, there's a bunch of ways you could do this, but essentially what I want to do, I just want to create like a little box in here that will hold three things. We want to hold three text boxes, essentially. We want to have a name, and then like an area for the dialogue, and then just a little note down here that just says press E to continue, or whatever your interaction is, press F to continue, or whatever. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a vertical box, add that to the canvas panel, and let's anchor that to the bottom center. And my alignment, I'm going to set 0.5 and 0.5. And then I'm just going to clear these out so it's down there at the bottom. For your size, you can make this whatever size you want, whatever size feels good to you. I think I'm going to go 1200. And then for size, maybe like 300. That feels pretty good. And then on the position, let's see, position Y. Yeah, I just want to move this up a little bit. Maybe, I don't know, around 250, minus 250. Let's try that. Okay, and now we need to add some text boxes. So we're just going to add one there. And then I'm going to duplicate that 3 times so that we have 3 text boxes. And the first one I am going to call name. And let's see, let's center that. Okay. And I'm also going to change the font. I'm going to use this Droid Sans Mono. Kind of like the look of that. There's only 3 choices by default, so not a lot to work with, but that'll be fine. And we can just put, this doesn't really matter what is in the text, but I'll put name for now. But that will just be changed because let's also mark this as a variable so that we can have access to that. And then our next one is going to be our dialogue. And again, this doesn't really matter what we put in text, but I'll just put dialogue. And I want to click on fill here. And then let's also give all of these a little bit of padding. So let's do like maybe 10 on each one. Okay. And then I'm going to change the font to this Droid Sans again. And I want to use center justification. And then I'm going to make this a little smaller by default, maybe like 18. And then I also want to wrap the text. Where is it? I always forget where this is. There it is, auto wrap text. That way, if we have a sentence that goes past the edge here, it'll just automatically wrap it around to the next line. Okay, that looks good. On our last one here, we want to just type in whatever we want, like press E to continue, ... And then I'm going to use the horizontal alignment just to put it on the right side there. And maybe make this a little smaller. Let's go with 18. And then I'll also change the font to the Droid Sans Mono again. That looks a little big. Maybe 14. Let's go with that. Okay. All right, and I think that is all we need to do for the time being. Let's go ahead and compile and save. Oh, make sure, so name is checked as a variable. Let's make sure that dialogue is checked as a variable as well. Compile and save. Now let's go to our graph. And I'm going to delete this stuff because we don't need it. And now we want to create a custom event, and I'm going to call this incoming text, and we want to have a few different inputs here. So our first input is going to be our dialogue. That is going to be a string. Next input is going to be text delay, which will be a float. So this will be the time between each letter, basically. And then the last one will just be called name. And that will be a text. Okay. Now, what we want to do is back on our BPC dialog, our actor component, we want to, first of all, we want to create a reference to the dialog widget. So we need to create that widget. So we're going to get events begin play, and we're going to create widgets. And we want to choose W_dialog. And then I'm going to drag out of here, promote that to a variable, and that's going to be W_dialog ref for our reference to that widgets. Then what we do, if we compile, we can drag that out, and I can get that event that we just created, which was called incoming text. Okay. And we can go ahead and plug this up. And now we need to create variables for each one of these. And these variables that we're going to create are going to be the public variables that we can change in the actual editor here. So let's just create 3 variables. We want one for dialogue, and that is going to be a string, but we want to make that an array, and we also want to make that public. The reason we want to make it an array is because that will allow us to have multiple sets of dialogue that we can do, and then that will allow us to do like multiple lines of text, essentially. All right, next one is going to be our text delay, which will be a float, and it's not going to be an array, just a single, and then we'll make that public as well. And then the last one will be name, which is going to be public, and you probably already guessed it's going to be text. All right, and then we're going to need one more. We need an integer. I'm going to call this current dialog, and that is going to be an integer, and I'll explain why in a second. So I think we have everything we need. The first thing that we're going to want to do is, actually, let's go back to our dialog here, and let's set this up first. Again, this is a lot of switching back and forth, but this is just kind of the way that we have to do it with communicating between the actor component and the widget. So in the dialog widget, the first thing that we're going to want to do is actually add it to the viewport. So add to viewport. And before I forget, we need a way to remove it from the viewport as well. So we want to go up, click E, read our text, and then when we finish, we want a way to clear that out. So I'm going to create another custom event, and I'm just going to call this like clear screen. And all we're going to do here is remove from parent. And remove from parent basically just is the opposite of adding to the viewport. Why they don't just have remove from viewport, I don't know. That would make more sense to me, but that's the naming structure that they go with. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to set a few things. So first of all, we want to set the name. So I'm going to get my variable here. And if you don't see these, make sure back in the designer, make sure you have name and dialog checked as a variable there, and then you'll see these. So I want to get my name, and I want to type set text, and we want the set text with the text in parentheses there. And we'll plug that up. And then name is going to go into the text here. Okay. And then we want to do the same thing with dialog. So get dialog, drag out, and we want to do set text. But we're going to leave this blank. Okay. And then we need to create some more variables for some things here. So we need a current index, which is going to be an integer. And we also need current dialogue or current speech or current text. Let's call it that, current text. And that is going to be a string. And I think that is it for now. Let's see. Yeah, so let's drag out of dialog here. And we are going to type get substring. And then our current index is going to plug into the start index here. And then our current text, we're going to get that. And we're going to append that with the substring. And then our return value here, we're going to get to text string here. Okay. And then from our dialog, we want to set text. Actually, let's just copy this, copy that. We want to do the same thing here. And this time the text is going to come from our substring, like so. All right, this is going to get a little messy. There's a lot going on here. All right, so that looks good. We also need to, let's see. Okay, we'll do this in a second. So our current text, I'm going to drag that out and set. We want to set that after we set the text here. That's going to come from our return value on the append. Again, I know I'm going through a lot here, and this is probably kind of confusing, but just bear with me. I'll kind of explain all this once we get everything set here. And then our current index, we're going to get that, and we want to increment like so. And then back from our dialog here, we want to pull out and we want to get the length. So if I start to type length, there's a function called len, and that will take the dialog, which is the dialog that we're going to type in. And so basically, like if I type out a sentence, if I type out, this is a test sentence, it will take all of those letters and spaces and convert that into an integer to give us the length of that. And we want to run a check here. We want to say, see if this is less than, actually we want to see if this, our current index, after we increment it, is less than the length of this. And, oops. If it is, so if that is true, we want to run a delay, which this delay is going to be our text delay. So drag that way over there. Maybe we reroute this just to keep things as tidy as we can. Okay, so that delay will be determined by whatever our default text delay is or whatever we want to set. And as long as the current index is less than the length of our dialog, this is going to loop back around here and run this again. So I'm just going to reroute this again so that it makes more visual sense. Okay. All right. I think we got it all set there. Now, again, this might be a little confusing, but it'll make more sense. I'll run a print string on things and kind of show you how everything is working if I set it up right. Fingers crossed. All right, so now we need to go back to our BPC dialog, and we need to set a couple of things here. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to get our dialog, and we want to drag out of that, and we want to type get, and we want a copy of that. And then the current dialog is going to be the other part of that. And from our get, that will go into dialog. And then our text delay will go into text delay. And our name will go into name. So this first part here, we are we're setting our dialog publicly, which means if I compile and save this, if we go here, we should see now in our dialog box, I can click on the BPC dialog here, and you can see we have name, we have our dialog, and we have our text delay. And actually, I'm going to reorder these a little bit. I kind of want name to be on top. And that should be good. Let me compile. Yeah, so now we have name, and then we have dialog, and then we have our text delay. Let's also set a default for the text delay. I think something like 0.025 is pretty good, but you can play around with that and choose whatever you want there. So now we can actually set what we want it to display on here. So we can say like painting, and then we can add the dialogue. These will be the actual lines of text that we're going to display here. So we can say like, this painting depicts a creepy scene. I don't even know what this is. A creepy portrait. This painting depicts a creepy portrait, let's say. And then maybe we'll do like ... and then we'll have another one, another dialogue that will say like, it's upside down. And that will be like the hint that we have to solve our puzzle over here. Okay, so let's see. I don't think we have our interaction set up. Yeah, let's go back to our dialog box. So we need to get our BPC dialog, drag that out, and we want to get the speech event that we created, and that's what we want to run when we interact with that. So let's just test this the way it is and see what happens. So let's play, we walk up to it, and there we go. Okay. So it is pretty much working, but we need a way to continue. So I'm pressing E and nothing else happens. And then we also need a way to get rid of this widgets. But we are getting there. So I can also kind of show you, if we go back to the widgets, so I can kind of try to show you a little bit what's happening here to help kind of explain all of this, because I know all of this is confusing. But if we get the events tick, and if we run a print string, and I'm just going to plug delta time into duration there. And let's see, if we check out what is coming out of here, or here, this is really the same thing, but you'll kind of be able to see what's going on here. So as soon as we hit enter, you see it kind of type out as it goes there. You can also kind of see, so the current index will be kind of helpful in seeing what's going on here too. So the current index is currently 0, what it starts at. But as we get the dialogue that is coming from here, we are getting the substring, which basically gets like all of the text from that. And we use the current index to only display that kind of first letter or whatever letter we're on the current index there. And then we increment that each time, which then goes through, runs this loop until the current index is less than, or as long as the current index is less than the length of that dialogue. So basically like the number of letters and spaces we have in there, as long as it is less than that, it's going to continue to run this. And then when it's finished, it will just return false. Okay, so let me kind of show you what's going on if we do that. So let's play, hit enter, and you can see, oh, it does it really fast, but actually another thing that we could do is kind of display or test out our text delay here. So if I set this to something much slower, or actually higher, because this is the time between the delay. So if I set this to like 0.5, half a second, then that will go much slower. So then you can see counting 1, 2, 3, 4. So each letter, it's setting the current index, or it's adding on to that and then setting that as the current index, and then displaying the next letter one after the other. Okay, but we need a way to continue to go on to the next line. I'm just going to delete this. We don't really need that anymore. And let's also reset our text delay. Reset that. And let's go back to BPC dialog. All right, so what we want to do now, this is going to handle, after it finishes that first line, we're going to get the length of this. So length, or I'm sorry, we want to get the length of the dialogue. And then we also want to get our current dialogue again. And we will increment that. So we're kind of doing the same thing, but we're just doing it with the array instead. And we're also not going to loop this. Well, we are kind of looping this because each time we're hitting our interact, we're running this. But it's not looping it automatically. And then we want to check if the result of this increment is greater or equal to the length of our dialogue plus 1. So we want to add 1 and check that here. So we'll get a branch. And as long as this is true, we want to set the dialogue back to 0. And then essentially when this is set to 0, this is finishing our event, or the number of lines that we have. And then we want to get our dialog reference again. And we want to call that clear screen, which is going to remove the widget from our screen. Okay, so compile and save, and let's test that out. So interact. This painting depicts a creepy portrait. Okay. So let's see, something is not right. Let's see what's going on. Okay, I think I figured it out. So back in our dialog, our widget, w_dialog, we need to set our current index, and we also need to set our current text back to blank here. So right in between where we're setting the text for the dialogue and where it begins the loop, we want to run these. Okay, so let's try that out. Interact. Now if I press it again, there we go. And then one more time, it is finished. Looks good. Okay. Now, the only other thing that we need to do is we still have this problem that we're not actually like pausing the game or setting the character to be frozen when we do this. Like I can walk away and this is a problem because now if I press E, nothing happens because we have to actually be interacting with this. So there's a couple of ways that you can deal with this. So the way I'm going to do this is basically just to set the game to be paused when we interact with this. But you could also, you could have the player, the movement be disabled, things like that. I think it would just be best just to pause the game. That way it'll lock the viewport where it is. And it'll still run our code and everything, but you just won't be able to move. Now, there is a very important thing that we need to do with that, because our input will not work if the game is paused. So if you want to do it that way, we need to edit our input setting. So wherever your input settings are, mine, I'm just using the default in the third person template. And under actions and under the interact, if I open that up, I need to check this where it says trigger when paused. So that needs to be true there. Okay. And what we want to do is when speech starts, we want to set game paused. And then when this finishes at the very end, oops, I didn't actually select that. So make sure that's true there. And then at the end, we want to set game paused, and that will be false. So it will unpause it. So let's try that out now. Play, interact. Now my screen is locked. I can't move my camera or anything else, but I can still press E. That still works. And then when I press it again, the game is now unpaused. And now we know the clue that we need to turn this, and then that opens the door. All right. So that's pretty much it. There's a couple of other things that you could do if you wanted to customize this a little bit more. Well, first of all, the great thing about this, creating it in an actor component like this, is, like I said, you can add this actor component to anything. So you could add this to a character if you wanted to have an interaction system or a dialogue system with a character. You could add this to something like our items here. So under item, you could just add the BPC dialogue. And now you could run your dialogue on your interaction. You might just want to run it like one time. So you would need to create a Boolean to be like, first time interacted. And then you could run the BPC dialogue or the speech. And then after that is finished, then you could just cancel that out and then you could continue on with your normal interaction. But you could add this to anything, really. I mean, you could add it to a barrel if you wanted to, as long as you have your interaction on there as well. You would just have to create a blueprint of that barrel so that you could get access to add your interaction. And it's very flexible. The other thing that you might want to do is you might want to change some variables like colors and things. So back in our dialogue, we could do that. If you go back to your designer, you see that you have all kinds of options for like color. You could, change this color to whatever you want. Or you could create variables for the font size. You could do any of this stuff. You could edit just about any of this stuff. So I'll show you how to do just the color, and you can kind of add whatever you want on there. So if we go back to the graph, what we can do is we can get the pre-construct. And if we get, let's say we want to affect the name, we can get the name, and out we can drag, we can type set color and opacity here. So we can plug that in, and then we can just create a variable here. So pull out promote to variable. We'll call that name color. And a very important thing that you want to do here on your variable, after you compile, make sure that you click on instance editable. And we also want to click on expose on spawn. That will make sense why in just a second. So let's also do that for our dialogue. Let's get that set color and opacity. And we'll promote this to a variable. That will be dialogue color. Okay, compile and save. And then again, don't forget, instance editable and expose on spawn. Now, what those settings do, if we go back to BPC dialog, on our widget, you will notice that we now have name color. It hasn't updated the dialogue color, maybe because I didn't save. Or I don't know, it might just not update. But if you just right click and refresh this, it should show up. There we go. So now you have those variables, you have access to those, and we just need to create those variables here as well. So if I promote this to a variable, name color, that's good. And then dialogue color, promote to variable, we can just leave that as is. And now if I compile and save, or just compile, then we can go ahead and set our default color. So I'll just set default to be white on both of those. Okay. But now, if we make these public, now when we go back, you will notice we now have name and color. So maybe the name we want to make like blue, and the color we could do like a red. And just as easy as that, that should work. There we go. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, you could do that for, any of the other variables if you want to have an option to change the text or the font. You could do that just as easily. So that is pretty much it. I hope that is useful. I know I really love in the old Resident Evil games when you get to, walk up and just kind of like spam E on every little item to see if it gives you a little bit of lore about the area, or sometimes like little hints and things. So that's super useful for doing that kind of stuff. So I hope you found it useful. If you did, be sure to leave me a like, subscribe if you can. It really does help. And check out the Patreon, check out the Discord. You can check out my assets on the marketplace, and leave any questions below, and I will see you guys next time. Take care, guys.